Welcome to Crowns of Fire, Episode 16, where today we're going to build a giant circuit board to run the level system of Dungeon Run. If you don't know what Dungeon Run is, check out the title card above. But we're going to get right into building this. Now that we've finished this system here, we can actually begin building the data area of this build, which is really simple. Each one of these sections activates two different outputs on our level system, and the level system will show the different numbers based on what output it's getting. The reason we have such a strange system back here is because we need it to activate using only one item per level. This allows us to save each player's individual data while still making it where other players can play the game in the midst. As well as, if you would like a tutorial for anything you see in this video, leave a comment down below and I'll go into a more in-depth description of the system you'd like. After hours of building the code for this system and building a whole nother data rack just to hold the numbers, I coded it backwards, and it reads right to left, which means I have to go and rebuild both of these data racks. So after getting about halfway through the circuit board, I realized the tunnel bore I built a few episodes ago, title card on screen now, wasn't going to supply me with the amount of redstone I needed, because we've used probably around 2 shulker boxes of redstone dust just for what we've built so far. And that's not going to cover it, and it takes hours to collect that much redstone using the tunnel bore. So instead, we've made this very crude witch farm, super simple design, just pushes them up this water stream and they die from fall damage. And then that gets collected into this system, but it produces so much redstone per hour that we're never going to have to run the tunnel bore for redstone purposes ever again. After many more hours of work and running the witch farm for a little bit longer for some extra redstone, we've finally finished the circuit board, and I couldn't be more proud of what I've made. This giant 50 by 30 mess of redstone wires may be one of the most complex and also the most random redstone contraptions I've ever made. Everything works flawlessly, other than this little section here, which we'll trade out later. It just bugs out every once in a while. But the original design for this system was actually use a form of binary coding, which would have made the system actually a lot bigger instead of more of a simpler, compact form. This is the most compact system we could have made. I worked for hours on the design of Creative World to just try and find what the smallest design was, and this gigantic form here was it. Over here, we have 2 red decoders that just tell the system what number to output based on which part of the system is activated. These systems here work by putting in a certain signal strength into the machine from 1 to 5, and we do this by negating 10 from that lectern there and using the subtract mode on this comparator. Super simple, although we accidentally built the red decoders in the wrong spot and had to move everything, as you can see with the weird comparator setup we have here. Inside the system here, you can see that the 0 is activated, and this is programmed so that when there is no input, then it is automatically to output a 0, just to make the system a little bit simpler. Now, if we go back into the system and input, say, 34 blocks all at one time, the system will actually be able to handle that, seeing as how it logs every single item that comes in. This is what allows us to do this little system here, which changes the number directly to whatever number of levels is in your data storage. I love the little animation look here where it looks like it's trying to count up and kind of glitching a bit, but it does always come out to the correct number, and the left number is always accurate. As you can see, we put in 34, and 34 has now come out, so the system is working flawlessly. The next part of the system we have to make is something that allows for the players to switch between data. So it has to turn on for one player, and then when they turn it off, it has to be able to accept a different player's data. For this portion of the system, we have to have a way to put hoppers here while also constantly deactivating them until we're ready to fully reset the system and input a new player's data. Now, this is really simple. You just make a system that's a T flip-flop, and as soon as the minecart is activated, it automatically turns off these hoppers so they can't do anything, and the system will load up their save data and their level and all that. Pretty simple. It uses just a couple pulse extenders and some NOR gates to flip the redstone lines around to the correct output. The complex part of this is actually going to be making the minecart system that deposits and removes all of the blocks from the system. After multiple hours of tinkering around with this one stupid machine, I finally have something that should function properly for this specific setup. How it works is this minecart sits here and will dispense items into the system, and then whenever you turn the game off, the minecart will be sent down to collect all of the items, which shouldn't break unless someone starts a game and then immediately stops before the minecart unloads, and even if it does, that's a very simple fix. But once all of the items have been dispensed and collected from the machine, this minecart will be sent back off down the hopper line and should be dispensed directly into whoever's save file is currently being played. And the way we do this is just with item filters and a few other simple things. Down here is where those are actually going to be located, just around this area somewhere. We have multiple inputs for multiple save data files. We're also going to have multiple different of these minecarts at different places in the system because of the fact that we have to store multiple different types of data for different systems. Now let's say we put 32 items into this system. It will then immediately start doing this part of the system, which we showed earlier, cycling through, finding out what level you're currently on. This part's actually fairly simple. And then once that's done, you can head over to the end, flip this little lever here, and the machine will automatically start collecting your items and send them off all on its own so that there is no input needed by the player to come back here and sort out through these things. The main part we're trying to go for Dungeon Run is to make everything as automated as possible so that the players don't have to mess with any of these contraptions and just get to enjoy the actual game that we're creating inside. And making that all automatic makes it a lot more fun for them because they're not having to worry about, like, oh, push the wrong button or break something. I think that's enough weird redstone contraptions for one day. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.